Welcome to Top Shelf here at the Score Studios. I'm Thakkar with my guys John Matisz, Levi Smith. No Kyle Cushman today, but Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals is in the books. Florida with a massive beatdown on the Oilers. And today's theme of our show is going to follow around probably the two best players for Florida so far in that series, and that is Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand, because they are both without contracts in July. I know a lot of people in Toronto are very interested in the future of these two playoff performers. There's a couple other really big notable free agents, but there's not a lot. So today I want to go through and I want to talk about these free agents. How much would we pay them? How much will they actually get? And where we think they might end up. But before we get into that, Bennett, Marchand, where would the Panthers be without these two right now?
Good question. I mean, they'd probably still be in the final, I feel like, because their road there seemed not that difficult. But in this series specifically, I mean, it was the first two games were like incredibly tight. I mean, you saw it with the 1-1 score. You saw it with the two overtimes. Obviously, McDavid and Draisaitl have had their magic moments, but the difference has kind of been those two guys, has it not been?
Well, the craziest stat for Bennett for me is the 12 away goals.
Yeah.
He's got 14, but 12 on the road. He's just, every fan base hates this guy, but every fan base would love to have that guy.
Yeah.
And Florida's proven you need a couple of those guys on your team to do damage for sure.
Well, and Barkov and Reinhart aren't really contributing. Obviously, Reinhart scored in Game 3, but like if this was, you mentioned how valuable they are. If Bennett and Marchand aren't stepping up, we start looking towards Barkov and Reinhart and go like, what's going on here? What's happening? Are they costing the Panthers a series?
They're making such an impact that you forget. Like they have the premier rat on their team also, Matthew Tkachuk, and he's like almost become invisible because these guys are just doing it at such a high level. So yeah, you need these guys to win.
Yeah, I feel like there has to be that whatever injury Tkachuk suffered at Four Nations just has to be impacting because he just feels like, to me, like an afterthought on this Panther team right now. It's Bennett, Marchand, Barkov, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, and then it's like Tkachuk. I'm like, wait, like, what happened to him? Like, what happened to Matty?
And he's already one of the worst skaters in the league, and when I watch him now, I'm like, this guy's in molasses, like he's in mud. He can barely get around the rink. He still is like making his kind of Tkachukian impact in terms of like scrums, and he hasn't hurt his team, but yeah, this is a guy who's scored 100 points in the league and obviously gets paid a big ticket, but he's been largely, on the fringes of their success.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess the one good thing that he hasn't gotten costing them, because he has had that attributed to him as well, as the dumb penalties, the stuff that Evander Kane partook in last night.
Yeah, how unhinged was Kane? Like, even in the first period, and don't get me wrong, like a lot of the first period calls in Game 3 were
soft.
Yeah, soft is a great word, but he was just losing his mind. You just can't do that. Like, it's not Tuesday in Columbus in November. Like, you got to rein in your emotions and just, take it and, get back out there and be maybe a little more cautious because clearly the refs are trying to make it about them.
And the misconduct that he got made a lot of sense to me because, I mean, it wasn't like this is a major penalty. It was a little dirty, little love tap to the face, but it's just get this guy off the ice.
Yep.
And let's move on to Game 4. Speaking of moving on, let's move on to the bulk of this show. And that is today we're going to be talking about 4 unrestricted free agents that I would say are the biggest names going into free agency, at least right now. And then we are going to get into 2 restricted free agents that people aren't talking about as much because I think people presume they'll end up where they are, but we will get to them later. And they're probably the best available defenseman technically without a contract.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with the forwards, and we're going to start with the guy that is the odds-on favorite to win the Conn Smythe right now, Sam Bennett. So we'll start with this. What is he worth? What will he get? And who's paying him? John?
It's a really tough thing to wrestle with, the Sam Bennett projection here, because in the moment, pay him everything, he wants, hand over a blank check. But like this guy's career high this season, mind you, was 51 points. He's a bit injury prone, more, a little bit in his 20s. He's 29. So he's probably looking for that last long-term deal. As much as he looks good right now, what does that contract look like in a few years? So you start working through that, but then you go, there's a pretty long track record of him performing in the playoffs. Like, he basically has doubled his points per game, which is crazy considering how many games he's actually played in the playoffs. And, he's got the aggression. He's got the sort of accidentally on purpose aspect to his game, especially in the crease area. And he's been producing. So I don't know. I would pay him, 7.5 over a long-term deal. In terms of, that's what I think he's worth in terms of like, if we're looking at subjectively or objectively, I should say, what will he get? Because I think he's going to stay in Florida. Like the wind is blowing in that direction, and it just seems like a foregone conclusion that even though he might go to July 1, he's going to re-up with the Panthers. I think $8 million. And why I land on that is both by percentage of the cap and then actual annual dollars. That puts him in between Carter Verhaeghe and Sam Reinhart on the sort of pecking order with the Panthers, and that seems about right to me in terms of like if you look at, again, taking us out of the moment a little bit, looking at the big picture, it's Barkov, Tkachuk, Reinhart, and then it's, the Bennett Verhaeghe tier, in my opinion. And, they can obviously work the advantages of the state taxes in Florida. This guy wants to stay here, so the team does have some leverage in that sense. And, they just maybe tack on that 8th year, and then that gives them a few extra dollars. So I think, if he went to the open market, I think there might be a team out there that spends $9 million on him. Whereas I would think that he's more like a 7.5. Yeah. But, if he stays in Florida, he's still going to get paid like $8 million, a lot of money. And I think that he'll be very happy because he's already there. He's found a ton of success, might be a multiple time cup winner, and you just keep rolling it back with this group.
Yeah, so my thought process with him in terms of how much you pay a Sam Bennett is, at the end of the day, like you know what you're going to get in the playoffs. I think you might not get 15 goals. Like that's this
is probably his high water
probably
mark,
his best playoff performance of his career. Fair enough, but when the regular season rolls around, you're probably getting somewhere between 35 to 50 points, and he's not going to have the best defensive metrics. He's not going to be a shut down center. That's not what you get. He's not going to sell tickets. Like people will be excited to see him a little bit probably in October, and then when they realize, oh, Sam Bennett doesn't look like Sam Bennett, it's that if you're okay as a management staff to say that we will be fine to make the playoffs with the rest of the team we have built here, and he will be a contributor, another guy in the cog, and then when we get to the playoffs, we're expecting him to take a step up and to show, okay, earn your money now. If that's what you're saying as a franchise, I think it makes sense. If you're on the other side, though, as a franchise, and you're like, oh, this guy can be our 2C to help us take the next step. Like, for example, a Utah. Like, I don't think Bennett makes sense for Utah to make a big splash because Utah needs to get to the playoffs before they worry about playoff performers.
Florida's I was going to say, they're probably one of 4 teams where a guy like Sam Bennett can be invisible in the regular season and nobody will say a thing.
Yep.
And then they get to the playoffs and he can do this. There's no other team aside from the elite of the elite where if this guy comes in, especially as a free agent now, and stinks it up in the regular season like he kind of has done in the past, it's going to be a huge stir. And in Florida, he can just disappear, kind of fall back, and then really step up.
This isn't even a power play one guy you're talking
about.
No. And if you're, say, Toronto, and Toronto's we want Sam Bennett to replace Mitch Marner. Well, you also now have to replace 50 goals, basically, in contributions from Mitch Marner. And if you're spending all the money that you were spending on Marner on Bennett, you all of a sudden have a lot of less money to fill that gap. So that's the tough part, is that you do, while the playoff performance is really important, it really works for Florida right now because they have so many other key pieces.
Yeah, I'd love to bat around a bunch of different teams, but it just seems like the main reason why he's going to July 1 is that Darren Ferris is his agent, and he has not a mandate, it's up to the player what he wants to do, but his whole thing, his whole shtick is let's go to UFA, let's see what the offers are. If you want to re-sign, all good, but I highly recommend you go to July 1. That's what Taylor Hall's done. Obviously Mitch Marner is about to do. A lot of Ferris clients like to do that. So that's sort of the reason why he's there, why he's getting there. But just the scuttlebutt around the league is that it's not quite locked in, but Florida is by far the lead horse here in terms of re-signing him. So,
and I think he'll take a cut because he wants to be.
Sure, and it's not going to be a major cut. This guy's in signing for $5 million when he's worth 7.5 or 8, depending on
But I mean, you saw Reinhart take a little bit less.
Yep.
You saw Tkachuk take a little bit less.
And Barkov only makes $10 million.
No.
That sounds like a big.
It's an internal cap, though.
Yeah,
right?
and
he's not
it's
going to get more than Barkov. So.
And it's not. And the thing about that internal cap is that it's not outrageous, right? It's not like Barkov's making 8, and it's okay, everyone fall in line. Everyone's he's way underpaid. It's no, $10 million, okay, we can fall in line from there. And obviously Gustav Forsling is underpaid, so the defense is a little different. But I just think that this group is so invested in each other, and the organization is so well run right now that they will let guys walk away, like a Montour who wants to chase that big payday, but they will make a compelling offer to guys that they want to stay here long term, and will make it enticing to them. So, yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense for the Panthers here.
All right, next guy on this list is a guy we already mentioned, Mitch Marner. Levi, what is he worth?
Yeah, Mitch Marner. I mean, this is going to be a little bit of a biased take, obviously coming from a Leafs guy, because I think if you're a fan of a team on the West Coast or just outside of Canada even, you look at Mitch Marner and be like, okay, he's good for 100 points every single year. Like, what a great player. He's not necessarily a playoff riser, but he doesn't fall off the playoffs. Like, his playoff numbers are still pretty solid. So you're going to think that he's worth pretty close to what I think he will get. I wouldn't put him there. I don't think he's a top 5 forward in the league, let alone a top 5 player, and it's looking like that's probably what he's going to get paid. You look at like a guy like Mikko Rantanen, who just signed for 12 in Dallas. Mitch Marner shouldn't be getting that, in my books anyways. He's not the same player as Mikko Rantanen. Obviously, other things factor in, but I would ballpark him to be worth around 11.5 to 12.
Okay.
Is what I think he's worth. What I think he'll get, and I'm pretty sure about this, is the Leon Draisaitl money. I think he's getting $14 million because some teams have already come out and kind of said behind closed doors that they're willing to pay him like Leon Draisaitl gets paid, which is that $14 million ticket, which is crazy to say. But the two teams that I read about most who have already kind of come forward and been like, yeah, like we're in the market, is the Anaheim Ducks and the LA Kings, two California teams. I think, honestly, of all the spots that you can go as a Toronto kid and you want to get out, LA's the place to be. So I honestly really can't blame Mitch Marner if he takes either of those deals. I think LA is going to end up being the suitor for him, just given new GM comes in, Ken Holland. They've got like $21 million in cap space to play with. I'm sure Rob Blake is like kicking himself, being like, "Oh, I could have signed Mitch Marner. Like, why? This is nothing crazy for Ken Holland. He's going to get all the flowers for it." But honestly, again, as a Leafs guy, I kind of really like this fit still. Like, I've already said my goodbyes to Mitch Marner. I know he's out the door, and for him to go to an LA Kings team that has so many young pieces still, like play on a line with, I don't know, Fiala and Byfield, or get moved up to that top line with Kempe and Kopitar, like,
That's a top 6, man.
Oh
That's
my
good.
gosh.
That's what they need too.
They need his creativity.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at that team when they head to the playoffs, it's too straight line, it's too predictable. So they need some sort of maestro like Marner. Mind you, the playoff thing is like,
well, that's the other point I was going to make, is it's perfect because he can just keep fighting his playoff demons.
this time against the Oilers.
Yeah,
Keep
now
losing
against
the
the
first
Oilers.
round,
But
right?
man, the way that he just fits the whole dynamic of that team too, being a defensive forward, like, there's a lot to like about Mitch Marner going there. So if I'm the Kings, I am throwing everything.
And they do have the cap to get
Yep.
it done. And yeah, you guys.
Well, I was just gonna say, you brought up Rantanen in there. Like, if Rantanen was also going to free agency, this would be a different conversation, because these big game hunting teams would be trying to make a decision. Okay, who do we want to really press for? But like, Marner's the guy now in a really weak UFA class, and I don't know. Teams can talk themselves into Marner pretty quickly, where it's like, oh, it's the market that really brought him down in Toronto. There's so much pressure. If you get him out of that, everything
Look
will
what
be
players
okay.
have done after leaving Toronto.
Exactly,
as well.
and just sort of like, oh, we can fix him in terms of, little tweaks that'll make him better in the playoffs, or hey, it's a sample size thing, and obviously the sample's big, but again, people can talk themselves into like, hey, it's been bad luck, hey, it's been his teammates, I don't know. Because the guy puts up points in the regular season, he's great defensively. Like, in a vacuum, Mitch Marner is what? Top 10, top 15 player
At
in the
least
league?
a top 5 winger minimum.
Yeah,
right?
okay, maybe I might have been, let's just say a top 20 player in the league.
Yeah.
He should get paid a lot of money, and it's just a matter of, does this guy come through in the clutch? That's all.
Yeah.
That's all that's left to be.
And with
determined.
the way the salary cap is trending,
Mhm.
$14 million sounds like absurd now, but when you're talking about what McDavid will get, and then also what guys will get 2 or 3 years from now, like what Matthews will get on his next deal and stuff, like, it's just gonna shoot that way. It won't be long before we're talking about $17-8 million deals.
Yeah, we got to
And
recalibrate our
I think you
expectations.
just like $14 million today is the $10 million of 3 or 4 years ago. Next guy though on this list, back to Florida, Brad Marchand. What a fit he has been. with the Rats, with the Panthers. He has been right at home there. I'm sure he would love to stay in Florida, but I mean they don't have the money for everyone. So John, what is Brad Marchand worth at 37 years old though?
Ooh, so the rumors around him is that he wants 3 to 4 years. Like he kind of wants to have that last contract. And the intriguing part about Brad Marchand is that he's kind of always been underpaid. Like if you look at his contract history, you're not looking at it going, oh, he really hit a home run with that contract. He's always, because he was a late bloomer, he got his 100-point season. I don't know, when he was like 33 or something.
Like not long ago.
Yeah, not that long ago. That he's kind of been always chasing that big ticket. So I totally understand his perspective of like, listen, I've won a cup. You might win another one. Like, I'm going to go big. I'm going to go big or go home here in terms of finding that right fit, obviously, in terms of joining contender, ideally, but also, like, I want to make some cash here. So what's he worth? I'd say around $6 million. He looks fantastic this playoffs, which is obviously a big benefit to him moving forward. Okay, he's 37. How's his skating? Oh, his skating is not a problem by any means. Okay, how is he contributing defensively? Or how are his details? All that kind of stuff. Check marks across the board. What will he get? I think that he'll get more than that because there's going to be a lot of bidders. And, a big theme of this episode is that there's just not a ton of good options out there. So if you're a team that, for whatever reason, feel like you can't figure it out trade-wise, you're going to focus on these UFAs. And the guy's a winner. Also, another thing is that I feel like he's kind of a one-of-one player in terms of, like, his ability to get in front of a camera and just, like, deflect and take heat from his teammate, off his teammates. We saw it at the Four Nations. We saw it for years in Boston. We're seeing in Florida where he can kind of just, like, work a room, for lack of a better way to put it, off the ice. And, like, that's something that's valuable to a team that's trying to either take the next step or feels like they have that, one piece that they're missing. So I think $7 million, and I really like the fit with the Golden Knights. They need some scoring and just offensive punch in general on the wings. They have a bit of cap space. They're sort of desperate enough, if you will, to pull the trigger on maybe a deal that won't age perfectly here towards the end of it, assuming it's 3 or 4 years and he's getting towards 40. I considered a team like Tampa. Okay, no cap space. I actually considered the Oilers here, but it's like my brain can't get to that point because they're against each other in the Cup final. But there might be a fit there. Like I kind of, again, another team that fantastic down the middle, but like the wingers are kind of interchangeable.
And loves old guys.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, anyways. Marchand to the Golden Knights, I also think that he would, vibe well with sort of the attitude there and as being the evil empire of the NHL.
Yeah.
That's kind of Marchand's shtick in some ways. So I like the fit there.
The only way I could see him staying in Florida if it was a 1-year deal with a bunch of bonuses, because then they could kind of punt the salary down the line a little bit. But you're right. He does want one more contract. He definitely wants to play at the Olympics next year, probably too. And I think he wants to make sure that he's securing himself because he isn't a guy that has $150 million in career.
I looked it up. He has like 73.
Yeah.
Still a lot of money, but
a ton of money. But yeah, 100%.
Is he without this cup? Is he still a Hall of Famer? Do you think? It was something I was thinking about the other day.
I don't think he's a first ballot guy, but I think he's in strong consideration to get it in like a week.
And then with this cup, you think?
Yeah. And he still has some.
Even
some
if they
runway.
don't win this cup, even this run this year with Four Nations and with this, I think just helps his case in every way. Like the more he extends on this career, especially if he signs another 3 or 4 year deal and he plays another 3 or 4 years, could really get.
I think he deserves this ticket, honestly.
100%. The other guy we're going to talk about UFA that's a little bit getting to the end, and another Leaf in John Tavares. Levi, let's get through this one pretty quick. But what do you think here? What's he worth?
I'd like to have some fun with this one, but I mean, this is a Toronto Maple Leaf if I've ever seen one. I think it's interesting because we've talked about on the show before where the Leafs had to entice him and give him the big deal that he got when they brought him in. It's kind of flip-flop now where he's like, come on, bring me back. Like, I'll take a pay cut and everything. And I think that John Tavares could get like $7.5 million, which does sound crazy to say, but he's point per game. And you look at two guys his age who signed UFA deals in the last couple of years. Joe Pavelski with the Stars. I think he was $7 million for 3 years. And Steven Stamkos last year signed that new deal with the Predators, $8 million for 4 years. So we're looking at two guys the exact same age as him that got between 7 and 8. Now, both of those guys, the risk is when you sign guys to that big deals, like Stammer had 53, and I think Pavelski in his age 35 year had 31 points.
He figured it out a couple
He
years
did
later.
figure it out down the road, but the nice thing about what John Tavares wants is he wants a team-friendly deal, so even if he starts putting up Joe Pavelski first-year numbers, the Leafs aren't going to be that upset because I think that they'll give him 5. I think 5's probably the height of it. I'm seeing Leafs fans being like, oh, we should give him 3.5, 4. He's still a point-per-game player last season. Like, he's an important part
can't be
to this
disrespectful.
team. No, give him 5. 5 is plenty low enough. And, I think he's sticking around in Toronto, which is, like, these are the kind of signings that teams need to make to be successful. You got to take team-friendly deals.
And Brock Nelson just signed 3 times 7.5. So, I think he's, like, a year younger. And I think Tavares is a better player, like, puts up more points. And, like, I think he's bringing more value overall. But relatively fair comparable. So I think that 7.5 is pretty good.
And I could see $5 million to John, but I could see it being a little bit longer term, kind of like or even like a $5 million times like 6 or 7 years,
like a Tanev situation,
like kind of a situation where
Yanni
like
Gourde
he's
situation.
probably not playing the last 2 or 3 years of this deal, but he'll get paid for them, kind of thing.
I mean, you could probably bring it down then to 4.5 or something.
Yeah,
in that respect,
I could just see a contract like that
Sure.
coming together for John Tavares, and I don't think that's a bad idea. For
The Tanev one's a
Toronto
good
or
comparable.
for Tavares. Yeah, next 2 guys on the list, much younger. We're talking about RFAs, and we're talking about 2 defensemen. One having just an unbelievable postseason. He's putting himself in conversations with Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar. People are saying, is this guy top 5? Is this guy top 3? That is Evan Bouchard. He has been unbelievable for the Edmonton Oilers. I'm going to put this out clean and clear. I'm not saying Evan Bouchard is interested in signing an offer sheet somewhere. I'm more curious in how much you guys think he is actually worth.
Sure. I think he's worth around $10 million. Like, if you look at, as we discussed before, like the rising cap, 10 sounds crazy, but it's really not, especially when you consider how this guy produces in the playoffs. And like some people who maybe don't watch the games closely will go, well, he plays with McDavid, he plays with Draisaitl. There's enough evidence here that he's driving the bus in his own way, and is almost like, I've heard it described as like a force multiplier, where like, yes, McDavid, can produce whatever 100+ points a year, but when he's with Bouchard, like that cuts to 150 and vice versa. There's a real complementary blend there. And I'm curious about you guys, what you think about this, but I've heard him described as a quarterback on ice, like, and I love that because it's like, you just look at his passes and they're just like bullets, and like there's these little windows that he can hit, and even as a shooter from the point, like he can just really, like the Bouch bomb, right? Yeah. He can just really dial in. But then there's some interceptions, and we see a few turnovers here and
like
there.
Cam Newton doesn't dive on the fumble.
Yeah.
Like he's got some lapses in his own end.
So I really like that as like him being this quarterback and sort of the imagery there. But he's a huge part of the Oilers' future, and I think he can maybe talk them up to $11 million. And where I land on that is Rasmus Dahlin. He's a decent comparable in terms of, like, I think that Dahlin's better than Bouchard, like in terms of overall value. Obviously different players, but like, kind of like these cornerstone defensemen. Dahlin, when he signed 12.5% of the cap, I think you take that down a bit to 11.5% of the cap, and you've got $11 million for Bouchard. This is obviously over like eight years.
And he has taken cuts in the past, so I think he is at the point where he is well within his rights to go to Edmonton and say, like, I want my contract. I'm not asking for 8x13. Like, I could probably be within my rights to ask for as a comparable to a Dahlin or something like that. But like an 8x10.5, 8x11, like that's a contract that will see out his prime. And leave him at, I think, 33 or 34 when it expires. Like, that's exactly when you want a guy's contract to expire anyways. So 8 years does make sense. You give him 3 years, then he's 29 and wants 8 years, then you're getting into nightmare scenario contracts. So I think 8 years makes sense for both sides. And I like the number, too, where because he's going to get more than Nurse, too. He has to get more than Nurse.
Good point.
And I think 11 is... They have the space to do it as well.
He's played himself into, like, for a while in Edmonton, it was pay Draisaitl what he wants, pay McDavid what he wants, and we'll be good. Now that's the big three now. It's those three. He's really played himself into, like, lock these three up, and the rest will figure itself out.
Yeah, and obviously if you had to lose one of those three guys, it is Bouchard, because, I mean, you can replace a power play quarterback. But some teams would be looking for a power play quarterback still. And one guy who is still an RFA and kind of in a weird spot is Noah Dobson because he's coming off a weird year in Long Island. They had the first overall pick this year, and everyone thinks they're going to take Matt Schaefer, who is their number 1 D of the future. Dobson's 25, got some Norris votes a couple years ago, in line for a big, big deal. And I really wonder if it's going to be the Islanders who give it to him. But Levi, what do you think? What's he worth? Start there, and then we'll get to Dobson here together.
I'm still very high on Noah Dobson. Like you said, he was 8th in Norris voting 2 years ago, 7th in defenseman scoring, like far and away the youngest defenseman on that list. Really great player. And I do think, obviously, he's put himself in a bit of a murky area with this down year. But at the same time, I think he had 40 points. He was the second, there was only one right-handed defenseman that had more points that was younger than him, and it was Mo Seider. So, obviously, as bad as his season was, he's playing on the team that's had the 5th least goals this year. Like, really bad situation to be in. And if I'm the Islanders and an Islanders fan, I just hope they don't mess this up and let him walk or don't really understand how valuable this guy is. So I think he's worth like at least $9 million. Like this is a very, very solid defenseman, and had it not been for this season, I think that might even go up to 10. Like we're looking at like a future face of the league when it comes to a defenseman. I think he'll probably get around 8, and I think the Islanders would be really happy with that from the Islanders. But I do think there's a world where some teams understand his value. They're willing to make the sacrifice it's going to take and get some offer sheets in for him. So the 2 I had circled that kind of make sense just because they have all the assets and the cap space are the Sharks and the Blackhawks. Like those are 2 where like you look at their cores and look at their young players. If you can bring in a top 5 scoring defenseman onto your team who's only 25, that just is perfect for the timeline. And then the other one we mentioned earlier that the new guy coming in replacing Shanahan, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto Maple Leafs, whether they want to, maybe not offer sheet, but try and make a deal. I don't know if they have the exact pieces, but talk about a perfect fit for them.
Yeah. I wonder if Toronto really, they would have to give up Cowan, Danford, and some picks.
We're talking about a trade.
Yeah, because they don't have the picks to do the offer sheet. And in Chicago and San Jose's case, I mean, $8 million, I think that means you're giving up a first, a second, and a third.
Yeah.
And that means you're giving up the 2026 first. And given that
just,
guy who's
just
coming
risk,
next year in McKenna, like, I don't think you could do that straight up in an offer sheet. I would be more inclined, if I was San Jose especially, because they are definitely looking for a right-handed defenseman. That is totally, like, that's not a secret. They want one to play with Dickinson long-term. They, in my mind, would be more inclined to be like, we'll give you our 2026 pick and a second and maybe a prospect or something like that, but we need a top 10 protected on this pick or a top 5 protected on this pick because you can't, as good as Dobson is, you could not risk losing out on like a top 3 pick for Dobson, especially in 2026. The other team I was thinking about pre-show was Utah because they could use a PP1 quarterback, and they've got that 4th overall pick. A lot of people in Long Island really, really want James Haggins at local kid.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this idea, the 4th overall pick from Utah to New York in a sign and trade situation for Noah Dobson. It would mean New York gets Schaefer and Haggins to build their franchise around for the future. That is a 1-year retool where you still have the Horvats and the Barzals of the world, and then Utah makes that splash. They want to make the playoffs next year. Dobson would be the guy that could completely transform their defensive core.
It's a win-win.
Yeah,
I mean,
you got Sergachev and Dobson as your defensive core. Like that is solid.
Yeah.
They don't really need like a top 6, middle 6 forward at 4th overall. I mean, obviously every team would love one, but you don't need it. I think it could be a really interesting fit there.
I mean, the X factor here is Matthew Darsh, right? The new GM in Long Island, like on Long Island. What does he think of all this? Like, so he's been gifted the 1st overall pick. He's going to take Schaefer. That's presumed. It's pretty obvious. What does he think of the rest of the roster? Does he think with Dobson in the sort of rocky state that he's in, with whether it's the coach or the former GM, like, does he repair that, or does he go, hey, it's past the point of no return, let's get this guy out of here in terms of a trade or something else? So that's something to consider too. Like, everyone comes in with a fresh eye if you're that new GM. So, you know, even that Utah package, like, that maybe is enticing to the Islanders, who under a new GM could be like, we're really taking a step back here in this next year, and we're gonna figure things out with these 2 premier prospects.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting storyline to watch. I'm really excited for the draft. Only a couple of weeks away, and we'll be able to kind of follow maybe some storylines, some trades around there in the weeks leading up. We're gonna have another live mock draft next week as a show. But we also have one coming to the app that John was a part of.
Right.
If you're interested in that kind of content coming up. But before we finish off our show today, we do like to close out with some solid top shelf trivia. And Levi, take us away.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. It's been a couple episodes since we had trivia, so for all the new fans out there, buckle in and maybe see if you can do better than these guys on the couches. But we're talking free agents. I felt it was only fitting to go back the last decade and see if you guys can name the biggest earning unrestricted free agent from each year.
Okay.
So each cream of the crop, so to speak, from 2024 all the way to 2015. Free reign of the board. You can go wherever you'd like. Let's start with John.
And these are UFAs?
These are UFAs. So
UFAs always.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
I'm going to start with 2022, the late Johnny Gaudreau.
The late Johnny Gaudreau is correct. Signed that nice ticket in CBJ. $68.5 million, 7 years. Nicely done.
2024 was Gensel.
Jake Gensel. That's correct.
Yeah, in exchange for a third-round pick they got.
Yeah,
Carolina.
Something light, 100-point score, basically.
2023, this is kind of tripping me up because the name is not a marquee name, but is it Alex Killorn?
That's Alex Killorn.
What a class that was.
There's
That
a
is,
couple guys on this list that it really piqued my interest when I saw some of these
So
names.
really don't let anyone tell you that the 2025 UFA class is that bad.
Yeah.
When we're talking about 2023 highest
Oh,
earners,
yeah.
Alex
Oh, yeah.
Killorn.
It's awesome. But,
Okay.
2-1 John. Nicely done.
Yeah. All right. Now 2019. I'm assuming that's Artemi Panarin.
That is Artemi Panarin. Biggest contract on this entire list, $81.5 million. Obviously in New York. 2-2.
I'll go the year previous, the guy we talked about earlier, John Tavares.
That's correct. That's correct. That's the big deal where the Leafs had to win him over, and now all this time later, tables have turned. 3-2 John. Back to you, Aidan.
I believe in 2016, it was a 6x6 or 7x7 for Milan Lucic.
Oh.
That's Lucic. Very nicely done. I was worried if anyone was going to get that one, but yeah, Luch led the pack in terms of UFAs in 2016. Pretty crazy.
2015 Sabres. That's really jumping out at me, but so that's Eichel got drafted. Anyways, I'm going to move on from that. I'm going to go with 2021 Devils. I feel like this is a fumble here, but I'm going to go with it anyways. Andre Palat.
Andre Palat, incorrect.
Yeah,
not a second former Lightning center.
Yes, I believe 2021 Devils was Dougie Hamilton.
There you go.
Right,
Yeah,
just left
Dougie
Carolina.
Hamilton.
Palat
He
got
was
signed like 2 years ago.
he was the big ticket on that. Looking at that 2021 class was pretty crazy. It was like Ovi as a whatever state he was, obviously going back to the Caps, and Dougie Hamilton.
Okay.
Big two.
2020, that's got to be Alex Pietrangelo.
That is Alex.
It feels like
Pietrangelo.
it happened like 3 years ago, not 5 years
Yeah,
ago. But
no, he's been there. So 4-4, 2 guys left. One of these is gettable. The other one I think is the hardest one here.
2015, is that the one you think the hardest one here, or is it 2017?
I'm not gonna say.
Okay, 'cause I believe my shout at 2015, I believe that's former captain of the Buffalo Sabres, Kyle Okposo.
That is not Kyle Okposo. I will tell you, he was neck and neck with Lucic.
Oh, the
for
next year?
in 2016. So
what do you mean by neck and neck?
on the right train of thought. Almost had the exact same deal.
Mm.
So he would have
Just a
been
couple
up here.
dollars less
Yeah.
than Luch on his deal in 2016.
I'm going to go with that Dallas 2017. Is that Joe Pavelski's first deal there?
That is not Joe Pavelski's first deal. That was
Oh.
2019. 2-2. I'll tell you, the Sabres one I think is easier. Stars one I think is harder.
Okay, so the Sabres won. Is it Skinner?
It is not Jeff Skinner.
No,
was a
Skinner.
good
Skinner
guess.
came to Sabres Buffalo well after that. Well,
Yeah.
after
Not
that,
Jeff
actually.
Skinner.
I
And
think.
plus, it was a trade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was just thinking of guys.
But
that
then
made,
maybe they re-signed him.
guys
I
that
don't
made
know if
money
counts.
in Buffalo.
Right.
Was
It's not Philly Leno, is it?
no can't be enough money.
It's a crazy.
2015
Sorry, that
Buffalo,
wasn't a
I was
real
thinking
guess.
Zemgus Jurgensons.
No. This is a much more. But he's still playing.
Yeah.
Oh, I think 2017 is that Tyler Seguin.
Not Tyler
Not
Seguin.
UFA,
Not Tyler
no.
Seguin. I'll give you. Actually, no. Aiden, you can have one, and you guys each get one more.
I haven't even
see.
thought of the Dallas. I was so focused on the Buffalo one. Is it Linus Allmark? No,
No.
because he cooked in Buffalo and then got
Yeah,
his
I think it was-
contract.
Oh,
That
Linus
was a bad
Allmark.
guess.
One guess each. If no one gets either, we'll
I
call
was
it a
so
draw.
sure it was Kyle Okposo. I'm really frustrated.
It was a good idea.
Yeah.
2015
Dallas
Sabres.
17. Dallas 17 is not there anymore.
No.
Oh, I got it. Dallas 17 is that Alex Radulov? Come
Alex
on. I kind of laughed
Radulov.
you, but I don't think you.
No, I wasn't
I wasn't know. Yeah, I didn't think John was going to get there. Alex Radulov, great pull. He
That
got
was a
himself
really
a
good
nice
pull.
little 5-year, $32 million deal. Last one on the board, John to tie things up. Buffalo Sabres, 2015. I said it was the easier one of the two. We
I
gotta see
feel like
where
this
your
is
head
wrong
goes.
because he's not this old, but I'm gonna go with Rasmus Ristolainen.
Rasmus Ristolainen.
decent shout, actually.
Although was he drafted by the Sabres?
It's incorrect.
Yeah.
It's incorrect.
Was it one of the Johnson brothers?
No.
Who
Wasn't
was
one of
it?
them.
I don't have it.
2015 seems it's so long.
Yeah,
ago.
I
Yeah.
think that I want
And
to
the
say.
team was such a disaster then.
Yeah.
Why are they the top?
Did he? I don't know if he captained
Signings.
there. He captained down the road. Ryan O'Reilly.
Oh,
Oh,
Ryan
he
O'Reilly.
totally did just, yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
got a nice. It was actually like
Damn.
one of Buffalo's probably in this whole time, like one of their better swings at a guy. He got $52.5 million for 7 years.
Well, that was O'Reilly had signed a what's it called, the offer sheet with the Flames, but it was after December 1, so
Yes.
thank goodness Colorado matched that.
Yeah.
But it was a short deal, so I guess then he left because he wasn't happy in Colorado because they really struggled right after they got McKinnon. They-
right. It was
Good,
horrible.
good that first year, and then they were really bad for a couple years.
Yeah.
And then O'Reilly ends
Colorado.
up in Buffalo, and on his way out, he's like, "I hate losing, and this place is." I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but
Yeah.
he was like, "There's a losing culture here."
And then he went to Buffalo.
Yeah.
But then he went to St. Louis and won a cup, so at least he has that on his resume. Because if he didn't, that'd be a you'd always be looking back at that
Yeah,
Colorado
oh, yeah.
one as a
What a
mistake made by
list
him.
of names.
That is
Fun,
a good
really
one here.
fun.
I would have to guess 2025. The name on the board is Mitch Marner.
Mhm.
Would you guys agree with
Yeah.
that? He gets
Oh,
he
yeah.
gets more money than Sam Bennett every day of the
I
week.
think there's like a 95%
Yeah.
probability of that happening.
but the class in 2026 is going to be the really fun one.
Yeah.
We'll see how many of these guys.
McDavid isn't going to
resign.
be there. He's resigned.
He might. I heard a rumor that he wants to take a bus 2 hours south to Calgary. No, he doesn't. He definitely doesn't want to
Such
do
a
that. But that's all the time we do have for the show here on Top Shelf as we're watching the runs of Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand with the Florida Panthers. But with these 2-day breaks, we're going to have a couple more games to go probably next time we see you here on Top Shelf. That'll be next week, though. We're going to be coming at you guys with a full 32-pick mock draft here at the Score. We'll be fully fleshed out, getting ready for that draft. That's just over 2 weeks away as we count down the final days of the 2024-25 season and the final shows here of Top Shelf this season. That's all the time we got here from everyone at the Score. For Levi Smith, John Matisz, and myself, Aidan Thakkar, we will see you next time.